And then he threatened me.
Do you want to return the dog to him, or do you want to pay him the $400?
I'll return the dog to him.
Fine. He's returning the dog to you.
And
You understand?
I paid all the vet bills.
Just a second.
Vet bills.
I don't care, but I will prepare an order that within 5 days of today, you will deliver the dog back. He delivered the dog to you?
No,
You will.
I went to his house, picked it up.
You went to his house? Great. How far do you live from each other?
30 minutes, probably.
Is there a police precinct in the middle? Because I don't want this done at anybody's house. What police precinct is closest to you, sir?
The Bullitt County Police Department.
That's where you will meet 5 days from today. What's a good time for you?
4 p.m., 5 p.m.
What's a good time for you?
Whenever.
4 o'clock.
Yeah.
4 o'clock.
Yes, Your Honor.
Fine. We'll prepare an order, give it to you. You meet at the precinct and exchange the dog.
Will he pay me from what I gave him?
He'll give you back the $100.
What about all the vet bills?
That you eat.
Okay.
Got it?
Yes, Your Honor.
That's the order. That's what he wants.
Sounds good.
Let him go explain it to his daughter. Perfect.
right.
Thank you.
Let him win.
This court is adjourned.
Yeah, I don't know what exactly I'm going to do moving forward.
I didn't feel like I got the dog that I wanted.
I never made a threat to him, never did anything like that. I told him that I would take him to court.
There was definitely a better dog out there.
I'm an honest, hardworking man, and I deserve what he's supposed to pay to me.
Sarah and Judy.
So I was so confused because as I'm looking for where it comes from, because I know it's not a purebred, it said the American Bully is a great family dog because although bred from pit bulls, which sometimes have an aggressive tendency, the aggressive tendencies of American Bullies have been bred out. And I was a little bit confused how you could breed out the aggression.
I don't know. I hate to be that guy going home today to explain to his 7-year-old that she's losing her puppy.
Yeah, I'm glad I don't have to go home to that.
Title, Judy Justice.
Have you been cheated? Go to judyjustice.tv.
ও লাইভে ছিলে তুমি লাইভে
হ্যাকার 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 আমাকে হেল্প দাও হেল্প দাও হেল্প দাও হেল্প দাও হেল্প দাও আমাকে হেল্প দাও হ্যাকার পুরো আমাকে হ্যাকারের মতো ওয়ান ট্যাপ মারছে হ্যাকারই আসছিল ওটা হ্যাকার পুরা হ্যাকার ভাই
কিল করছো
কিল করি না হ্যাকারের ওয়ান ট্যাপ মারছে সে একদম হাই লেভেলে
হ্যাকারটা কোথায় গেল
হ্যাকারটা মনে হয় ওরা গেছে ওকে দাও ওক ধরো ওক সবাই মিলে ধরে ওক দাও আগে আগে শাস্তি দেওয়া লাগবে
ওকে আগে শাস্তি ওরা আগে বসাও পিঠে কটা
দেও ওক পিঠে কয়টা দেও
খেলা
All right, let's jump right in because today we're diving deep into Judge Judy's courtroom.
This should be interesting.
You guys sent in a transcript from a recent YouTube compilation.
Yeah.
And oh boy, is it full of everything we love about Judge Judy, from contract disputes to, family drama.
It never ceases to amaze me how these small claims cases give us this little window into all these legal issues that we all deal with in our lives. You know what I mean? It reminds us that even the simplest thing can turn into a legal nightmare.
Totally. And for anyone out there who maybe hasn't spent a lot of time basking in the glory of Judge Judy, she's pretty much known for her straight to the point style, her super sharp wit, and of course those one-liners, don't pee on my leg and tell me it's raining.
Yeah.
Classic.
Yeah. She does not put up with any nonsense, that's for sure.
Nope. And that's what makes it so good, right? So whether you're a huge fan or just kind of curious about how small claims court actually works, get ready because we're about to get into some seriously entertaining legal insights.
Yeah. This first batch of cases we're going to look at really highlights how important it is to put everything in writing. You'd be surprised how many of these disputes come down to just people misunderstanding each other or not having any proof of what they agree to.
That is so true. So this first case, we've got two musicians, Charles Kerper and Luther Fortenberry. They're fighting over a song, right? Kerper says he's the one who actually wrote the music for Fortenberry's song and that he deserves credit and all future royalties. So what went wrong? Didn't they have a contract?
Yeah, well, that's kind of where things get a little messy. So the very first contract they signed, it clearly says that Kerper was just transcribing Fortenberry's song to guitar. But then they had some later agreements where they tried to redefine Kerper's role as the music man, and that's where Judge Judy really starts to dig in.
Oh, the music man. I can just imagine Judge Judy's face when she saw that.
Yeah, she wasn't too happy about it.
I bet not.
No, she kept pushing Kerper, asking him, what does Music Man even mean? Does it mean you wrote the music or did you just like transcribe it? You know, she just really hammered on how like unclear their whole agreement was. And this is actually a really important point because in contract law, there's this concept called consideration, which basically means like both sides have to bring something valuable to the deal. So Kerper had to prove that like his musical contribution was like a real exchange, not just like some side thing he did.
So basically, by being all vague about his role, it made it way harder for him to prove that he, like, held up his end of the bargain.
Exactly. He couldn't show that Fortenberry agreed to give him the credit and the royalties, like, specifically in exchange for his work on the music.
Yeah, so that vagueness totally, like, sank his case.
Yeah, pretty much.
This case is like a perfect example of why clear contracts are so important, especially when you've got these creative collaborations where it can get really tricky to, like, define who contributed what.
For sure, for sure. And then moving on to a case that might hit close to home for a lot of people, we see how quickly things can go wrong when you mix like personal relationships with business. So in this case, you have Marquis Marshall and Kai Booker, and they're suing their old employer, Gary Zephron, because he didn't pay them what he owed them.
Okay, so what makes this one stand out? Was it just a simple case of like not getting paid for work?
Well, it's a little more complicated than that. See, Marshall and Zephron, they weren't just business partners. They were also like friends from high school and old teammates. So, you know, there were all these personal feelings involved.
Yeah, okay, so the stakes were higher because they were friends.
Exactly. So Marshall said Zephron didn't pay him the full amount they had agreed on, but the problem was he didn't have any like detailed records to back up his claim. And then Zephron, he said, oh, well, the reason I didn't pay Marshall everything was because he kept my van for 2 days after we stopped working together.
Wait, so he's saying he withheld like hundreds of dollars because of a 2-day delay with a van. Come on, what did Judge Judy say about that?
She was not impressed, to say the least. But then this is where it gets really interesting. Zephron kind of slips up and admits that he does actually owe Marshall $400, but he held on to it because he was mad about the van thing.
So even though Marshall didn't have great records, Zephron's own words like totally undermined his case.
Pretty much. Judge Judy made it very clear that like holding back someone's pay is never okay, even if you're upset about something else. So she ruled in favor of Marshall for the $400. This case really shows us why it's so important to keep things professional, even if you're doing business with friends.
It also shows how Judge Judy is like a master at cutting through the BS and figuring out what's really going on, especially when someone's trying to pull a fast one.
Oh yeah, she can see right through that.
Absolutely.
And speaking of cutting through the BS, our next case proves how like digital records can make or break a case. So we've got Dominique Johnson. She's suing Chris McIntosh, her children's uncle, over a truck. She says he never gave her the truck after she paid him $2,700 for it.
Another case with a missing vehicle. It seems like cars cause a lot of drama in Judge Judy's courtroom.
They really do.
So did McIntosh have any proof that he'd actually delivered the truck?
Nope. He insisted that he had delivered it, but just like a lot of folks who end up in small claims court, he didn't have any paperwork. All he had was a story about buying the truck at an auction. But that's where his story started to fall apart.
What happened? Did the auction company have some kind of record of the sale?
Oh, they had more than just a record. They had this incredibly detailed digital log of every single vehicle they had sold. We're talking photographs, buyer usernames, the price each vehicle was sold for, the whole 9 yards. And guess what?
There was no record of McIntosh buying any truck.
You got it.
Busted by the internet. That's a pretty powerful example of how those online records can backfire on someone who's trying to be sneaky.
Absolutely. And Judge Judy was clearly impressed with the auction company's record keeping, you know, especially compared to McIntosh, who had nothing. It really highlights how in today's digital world, those online trails can tell a story whether you want them to or not.
Yeah, and sometimes those trails lead straight to justice. It makes you wonder how many cases have been solved thanks to those digital records.
That's a really good point. It's like, even though technology creates all these new problems, it can also be a huge help when it comes to fairness and holding people accountable.
For sure. Speaking of accountability, this next case is a pretty stark warning about the consequences of irresponsible behavior, especially when it comes to drunk driving.
All right, welcome back to our Judge Judy deep dive. We've already seen how, like, clear communication and having good proof are so important in her courtroom. But sometimes even when things are kind of murky, Judge Judy has this like knack for finding the truth.
Yeah, and that's honestly like a big part of what makes her show so captivating. She's like a legal detective putting together the puzzle with her wit and all those years of experience. Our next case is a prime example of that, but also how like personal dynamics can just make everything so much more complicated. Remember Marquis Marshall, who was in that earlier case fighting about not getting paid?
Yeah, the one with his old teammate and friend Gary Zeffron.
Right. Well, he's back in Judge Judy's courtroom. But this time he's going up against a different former employer, a guy named Gary Jackson, over, you guessed it, unpaid wages. Seems like working with friends can be risky business.
Yeah, sometimes. And this case really gets into the whole issue of those like verbal agreements and how crucial it is to have things in writing. Marshall claims that Jackson promised him a specific amount each day for making deliveries, but then things went south when Jackson supposedly changed the terms of their deal.
So another one of those classic he said, she said situations. Did Marshall have any documentation to back up his claim?
Sadly, no. And this is where you see again and again just how vital those detailed records can be. Judge Judy, always the practical one, wanted to get a handle on the situation, so she asks Marshall, how much did he actually earn during the time he worked for Jackson?
Oh, I bet that put Marshall on the spot. Was he able to give her like a clear number?
Well, he had a hard time giving her an exact figure, claiming that Jackson's payments were like all over the place. Marshall had kept track of the days he'd worked, but not the specific amount he got paid each time. And without that crucial evidence, it basically turned into a battle of their words.
It's like a recurring theme with Judge Judy, right? Without clear records, proving your case becomes a real uphill battle.
It is. She's constantly emphasizing how important it is to document everything, especially when money is involved. I mean, this whole situation could have been avoided with just a simple written agreement laying out those payment terms.
But wait a minute. If Marshall didn't have records and Jackson was denying owing him money, how did this case even move forward?
Well, that's where things take a turn. Jackson might have accidentally helped Marshall's case without even realizing it. He let slip that he actually did pay Marshall something like $20,000 over the time they worked together. And that completely contradicted what he'd said before about Marshall supposed to work for free until they covered all the business expenses.
So Jackson's own words ended up like undermining his defense.
Yep. And Judge Judy, she's super sharp. She immediately pounced on that inconsistency, using it to show that Jackson's story wasn't all that believable. But wait, there's more drama. Jackson then spills the beans about why he held back that last $400 payment.
Okay, I'm all ears. What was his excuse this time?
Get this. He claimed that Marshall held onto his work van for 2 days after their partnership ended, which supposedly caused him to lose business. He felt like those 2 days justified withholding that final payment.
Are you serious? 2 days? That seems like a pretty flimsy reason to hold back someone's hard-earned cash.
Judge Judy thought so too. She quickly dismissed Jackson's argument, ruling in Marshall's favor for the $400. It was a clear message. Like I said, withholding pay is not okay as a way to get back at someone, no matter what happened.
Man, this case is a whirlwind, right? Emotions, conflicting stories, and then boom, common sense and fairness win the day. It's a good reminder that even when you're doing business in a more casual way, especially with friends, clear communication, having things in writing, and just acting professionally are so important.
You got it. Now let's switch gears to a case that reminds us how technology, while it can be great, can also cause a whole lot of trouble, especially when it comes to legal stuff. Dominique Johnson is suing Chris McIntosh, the uncle of her children, over a truck that she says he never delivered after she paid him $2,700.
Another missing vehicle. It's like Judge Judy should moonlight as a car detective with how often these cases pop up.
You're telling me cars, they just seem to bring the drama to her courtroom. So in this one, McIntosh is adamant that he handed over the truck. But, surprise, surprise, he doesn't have a single piece of paper to prove it. His big defense is that he bought the truck at an auction. But of course, that's where his story hits a snag.
Okay, so no bill of sale, no receipt, nothing.
Nothing.
I'm sensing a pattern here. What did he offer up as proof then?
Just his word, which, as we've learned, doesn't carry much weight with Judge Judy. However, the auction company he claimed to have bought the truck from had something he didn't, a digital footprint, and a big one.
Ooh, okay, I'm intrigued. What did this digital footprint show?
Okay, so picture this. The auction company's website, it's got this ridiculously detailed record of every vehicle they've ever sold. I'm talking photos, buyer usernames, the price each vehicle went for, everything. And when Judge Judy dug into those records, there wasn't a single mention of McIntosh buying any truck on the dates he claimed.
The internet strikes again. It's amazing how those online records can be a real truth teller. McIntosh's little scheme was totally busted because the auction company was on top of their record keeping.
Right. Judge Judy gave them props for being so thorough, especially compared to McIntosh, who, again, had zero evidence. It really drives home the point that in our digital world, those online trails can be more revealing than you might think.
Yeah, and it's like you said, those trails can lead to justice. It makes you wonder how many cases have been solved thanks to those meticulously kept online records.
It's an interesting thought, isn't it? Like, technology can be a double-edged sword. It creates problems, but it can also be a powerful tool for accountability and making sure things are fair.
Totally. Speaking of accountability, our next case is a real cautionary tale about what can happen when people act irresponsibly, specifically when it comes to drinking and driving. We've got two buddies, Justin Daniel Gray and Tony Woods. They end up in Judge Judy's courtroom after a night out drinking that ends with, you guessed it, a wrecked car.
Oh boy. This is a classic example of how a lack of personal responsibility, just not owning up to your actions, can land you in a whole heap of legal trouble. Both Gray and Woods, they admitted to drinking that night, but each one pointed the finger at the other, saying the other guy was the one behind the wheel when the accident happened.
So a classic he said, she said, but with the added danger of drunk driving. Did they have any witnesses to back up their stories?
They did bring in another friend, a guy named Muhammad. He was there that night, but his memory of what happened was, let's just say, a bit hazy, after all that drinking.
Oh man, not exactly the most reliable witness then. So how did Judge Judy handle this situation? 3 guys, all intoxicated, no clear evidence pointing to who was driving. That's tough.
She didn't hold back, that's for sure. Judge Judy made it very clear how frustrated and disappointed she was, highlighting just how dangerous drunk driving is, and saying straight up that she had zero sympathy for anyone who chooses to get behind the wheel while intoxicated. It was a powerful message delivered with her signature no-nonsense style.
Yeah, when Judge Judy says zero sympathy, she means business. So what was the verdict? How do you rule when it's impossible to say for certain who was driving?
Even though it was unclear, Judge Judy held both guys responsible for their reckless behavior. She ordered them to split the cost of the car repairs right down the middle.
Interesting. So even though the actual driver remained a mystery, she put the emphasis on their shared responsibility for getting behind the wheel after drinking. Is that a common legal approach?
It is a tactic that's used sometimes to highlight that idea of shared responsibility, especially in situations where you have reckless behavior that leads to clear consequences, no matter who was technically at fault. And it sends a strong message about the dangers of drinking and driving, no matter how you slice it.
Absolutely. It's a reminder that our choices have consequences. And sometimes, even when you think you've gotten away with something, the truth has a way of catching up to you.
For sure. Now let's move on to a case that takes us into the world of filmmaking. It shows how a simple favor for a family member can spiral into a full-blown legal battle. We've got Christian Sanchez, and he's suing filmmaker Juan Vasquez for unpaid work and defamation of character.
So going from car troubles to Hollywood drama. It seems like no industry is immune to these disagreements and legal battles.
That's the truth. So in this case, Sanchez got the job through a family connection, a favor from a producer to Vasquez. Sanchez is saying he was promised payment for his work, but Vasquez is insisting that Sanchez was just an unpaid intern.
The classic intern debate. It's a hot topic, and even Judge Judy's courtroom isn't safe from it.
You got it. And to make things even more confusing, Sanchez had actually signed what they called an actor agreement, even though he didn't do any acting in the film.
Hold on, an actor agreement for a non-acting role?
Yeah.
That's strange. What was Vasquez's reasoning behind that?
Well, Vasquez tried to use that document to back up his claim that Sanchez was just an intern. But Judge Judy wasn't having it. She questioned the whole logic of having someone sign an actor agreement if they weren't actually acting. It was one of those classic Judge Judy moments where she calls out the absurdity of the situation with her sharp wit.
I bet Vasquez was sweating under that scrutiny. Did he try to defend himself?
Oh, he did. But everything he said seemed to backfire. He even made a comment about Sanchez not being able to even order pizza properly, trying to imply that Sanchez was incompetent, and that's why he didn't pay him.
Ouch. That's a low blow.
Yeah.
But even if someone isn't the best employee, they still deserve to get paid for the work they do.
Right, absolutely. Judge Judy was very clear about that. She said if you have an employee who isn't performing well, the right way to handle it is to fire them. But it has to be done legally and ethically, not by withholding their pay.
It seems like Vasquez was trying to play both sides. getting free labor, and then trashing the person he didn't pay. What did Judge Judy do about that?
She carefully looked at all the evidence, including text messages between Sanchez and Vasquez. And she found out that Vasquez actually communicated with Sanchez like he was an employee, even asking him to do things like order food and arrange pickups.
Those sneaky digital trails pop up again. They always seem to tell a different story than what people try to present in court.
Exactly. Based on that evidence, Judge Judy decided that Sanchez was indeed an employee, regardless of how well he did his job. She awarded him the full amount he was owed for 14 days of work.
Another win for fairness. It's a reminder that even when you're doing favors for family members, you've got to handle things professionally, with clear contracts and expectations.
Now let's dive into a case that's a little more emotional. It reminds us that even during times of grief, money issues can create tension within families. Tracy Jennings Spencer is suing her cousin, Chris Jennings, for a loan she gave him to cover the funeral costs for his mother.
Oh, this one sounds heartbreaking. Family conflicts, especially when someone has passed away, can be incredibly difficult to deal with.
It really is a sad reminder that money matters can complicate even the most sensitive situations. Spencer, wanting to help her cousin, stepped in when she learned that he couldn't afford to have his mother's body released from the hospital. She covered the $1,500 cost for the mortuary and cremation.
That was incredibly kind of her. What a tough situation for everyone involved.
Yeah, it was. But then Jennings claimed that the money was actually a gift, not a loan. But here's where things get messy. He went and started a GoFundMe campaign for the same expenses shortly after Spencer had helped him out.
Hold on, that doesn't sound right. Why would he need a GoFundMe if the expenses were already covered by a gift?
That's exactly what Judge Judy thought. She immediately picked up on the inconsistency in Jennings' story, pointing out how illogical it all seemed.
I love how Judge Judy just uses her sharp wit and her logic to uncover these little inconsistencies. It's like watching a legal mystery unfold.
I know, right? So Jennings tried to backpedal a bit, claiming that the GoFundMe was just a backup plan in case Spencer hadn't come through, but Judge Judy wasn't buying it.
It sounds as he was trying to take advantage of his cousin's generosity while also asking for money from the public. What ended up happening in this case?
Judge Judy didn't hesitate. She ruled in Spencer's favor, awarding her the full amount of the loan. It was a clear message that being honest and transparent is crucial, especially when you're dealing with money matters within families.
It's a sad but important reminder that even in times of grief, you've got to keep things clear and ethical when it comes to finances.
Our final case for this segment focuses on a dispute over a puppy. It highlights how important it is to do your homework and have a written agreement when you're making a big purchase. Kenneth Bearden, a dog breeder, is suing Zach Thompson for the balance owed on an American Bully puppy.
Puppies, they're supposed to be all about joy, not legal battles. What went wrong here?
Well, Thompson claimed that he didn't get the purebred dog he was promised and wanted to return the puppy without paying the remaining balance. He believed that the puppy was mixed breed, basing his opinion on what his friends had told him about the dog's appearance.
Relying on hearsay again. That almost never works out well in Judge Judy's courtroom.
You're right. Judge Judy dismissed Thompson's anecdotal evidence, emphasizing that he needed solid proof, like paperwork from the breeder or a DNA test. And she also expressed some doubt about Bearden's claim of being a breeder, since he didn't have the proper AKC registration.
So we've got a buyer who maybe didn't do enough research, and a seller who might not be totally above board. What's the takeaway here?
This case really underscores how crucial it is to be informed and protect yourself when you're making a purchase, especially when it involves a live animal.
Right.
If you're looking for a specific breed, get it in writing, make sure the breeder has a good reputation and can provide you with the right paperwork, and think about getting a DNA test if you have any doubts about the dog's lineage.
That's good advice. But in this particular case, how did Judge Judy rule? Did Thompson have to pay the rest of the money, even though he had doubts about the dog's breed?
Well, that's where things get interesting. Despite the lack of a written contract and the questions about the dog's pedigree, Judge Judy focused on a key admission from Thompson. He admitted that he wouldn't return the dog even if he knew for sure it was mixed breed. He had already bonded with the puppy and wanted to keep it.
So even though he had concerns about the dog's breed, his emotional attachment to the dog actually ended up working against him in court.
Exactly. Judge Judy pointed out that because Thompson had decided to keep the dog, he was obligated to pay for it. She said that while Bearden hadn't provided enough evidence to prove the dog was a purebred American Bully, Thompson's actions showed that he had accepted the dog as his own.
It's a classic case of buyer beware. Thompson's emotional attachment to the puppy ultimately meant he had to pay up. He should have dealt with his concerns and tried to resolve the situation before getting so attached.
You got it. This case shows us how important it is to make things clear, do your homework, and get legal advice if you need it, especially when you're making a significant purchase.
Welcome back to the show. We're wrapping things up today with a few more cases from Judge Judy's courtroom. We're going to see how money and relationships, they don't always go so well together.
Yeah, that's for sure. Our next case dives into that whole messy world of loans between friends. We've got Vanessa Hickman. She's suing her personal trainer, Dylan Vloff, for an unpaid loan.
Oh, here we go again, mixing personal connections with financial stuff. It always seems to get complicated. It's something a lot of people can relate to, wanting to help a friend out, but also needing to be smart about your own money. So what exactly went down in this case?
Okay, so Hickman says she lent Vloff $2,300 when he told her he was having money problems and needed help with rent. But Vloff, he's saying it wasn't a loan, it was actually a prepayment for his personal training services. He claims Hickman bailed on the training program, so he didn't owe her the money back.
So we've got another one of those situations where people have different interpretations of an agreement. Did they have anything in writing to clarify the terms?
Hickman did have a copy of a handwritten agreement, but it wasn't very well written and actually kind of contradicted itself. It mentioned both prepayment for training and monthly installments for repayment. Just didn't really make sense.
Sounds like a case of good intentions gone wrong. You know, that lack of clarity, it can cause so much confusion and conflict. So how did Judge Judy handle this one? Did she try to sort out that confusing agreement?
Judge Judy, she's got that legal mind. She could see the inconsistencies in the agreement right away. But she also sensed there was more to the story. So she starts by asking Vloff about his hourly rate for personal training.
That seems like a random question. What was she getting at?
She was probably trying to figure out how much money he was making, to see if his financial problems were as bad as he claimed. If he was charging a high hourly rate, it would kind of throw doubt on his whole story about needing a loan for rent.
It's amazing how Judge Judy can take these seemingly random details and use them to get a better understanding of the situation. So did that line of questioning uncover anything interesting?
It sure did. After she established Vloff's hourly rate, she shifted the focus to that $2,300 payment. She pressed Hickman, asking her why she'd suddenly give Vloff such a big chunk of money, especially after consistently paying him $500 per month for training. And that's when Hickman drops a bit of a bombshell.
Okay, I'm hooked. What did Hickman reveal that changed things?
She shared that Vloff had told her about his struggles, mentioning that he couldn't ask his girlfriend's father for help because he didn't want him to find out about his cocaine addiction.
Whoa, that's heavy. It sounds like Vloff might have been using their friendship to get money for his addiction, not just for rent, like he initially claimed.
Yeah, it seems like Judge Judy was thinking along those same lines. And her suspicions just grew when she asked Vloff why Hickman had a picture of his driver's license saved on her phone. Vloff couldn't really explain it. He just kind of fumbled over his words.
Yeah, that's definitely suspicious. Who keeps a copy of their trainer's driver's license unless they're worried about being ripped off or not getting paid back?
Exactly. Judge Judy wasn't buying Vloff's story at all. To get a clearer picture, she called his wife to the stand.
Oh, this is getting good. I bet Vloff was feeling the heat. So what did his wife have to say about this supposed loan?
Turns out Vloff's wife had no clue about that $2,300 transaction. She only found out about it when Hickman contacted her through Instagram, asking about a late payment on the loan. It became pretty clear that Vloff had kept this whole thing from his wife.
So not only was he deceiving his friend, but he was also being dishonest with his wife. It seems like his whole web of lies was starting to unravel.
It was. And to make matters worse for Vloff, his wife showed that she didn't even know about his cocaine addiction until Hickman reached out to her.
Wow, it seems like that loan brought a lot of hidden problems to the surface. It's a reminder that sometimes these money disputes can expose deeper issues in relationships.
Absolutely. But Judge Judy, to her credit, she recognized that Vloff's wife was being honest and trying to support her husband through rehab. She commended her for taking positive steps to deal with the situation.
So in the end, did Judge Judy side with Hickman's version of events?
She did. Judge Judy ruled in favor of Hickman, awarding her the remaining balance of $1,800. She saw that Hickman was just trying to be a good friend, but Vloff took advantage of her.
This case is a real cautionary tale. Even when your heart's in the right place, lending a large sum of money to a friend can backfire, especially if you don't have a clear written agreement.
Let's finish our deep dive today with a final case that really hammers home the importance of clarity, research, and documentation, especially when you're making a big purchase. This case involves, you guessed it, another puppy. An American bully puppy, to be exact.
Another puppy. It seems like those cute little fur balls can cause as much drama as cars in Judge Judy's courtroom. What's the story this time?
Okay, so we've got Kenneth Bearden, the dog breeder. He's suing Zach Thompson for the rest of the money owed on the puppy. Thompson is arguing that he didn't get the purebred American bully he was promised, so he wants to return the dog without paying the full amount.
So it's a disagreement about the dog's breed and the terms of the sale. Was there a contract?
Nope, no contract. And that's where the trouble starts. Thompson said he was willing to pay the full price if the dog was actually a purebred American bully. But he believed it was mixed breed based on what his friends had told him about how the dog looked.
Relying on hearsay again. We already know that doesn't impress Judge Judy. Did Thompson have any other evidence to back up his claim?
Not really, and as expected, Judge Judy wasn't swayed by Thompson's anecdotal evidence. She said he needed something concrete, like paperwork from the breeder or a DNA test. And she even questioned whether Bearden should be calling himself a breeder since he didn't have that official AKC registration.
It sounds like both the buyer and the seller kind of messed up in this situation. What was the deciding factor in Judge Judy's ruling?
She honed in on something Thompson admitted. He said he wouldn't actually give the dog back even if he was sure it was mixed breed. He'd already gotten attached to the puppy and wanted to keep it.
So his emotional attachment to the dog ended up being his downfall in court. By saying he wouldn't return the dog, he basically gave up his right to challenge the sale.
Exactly. Judge Judy made it clear that because Thompson decided to keep the dog, he was obligated to pay for it. She said even though Bearden didn't provide enough evidence to prove the dog was a purebred American bully, Thompson's actions showed that he accepted the dog as his own.
It's a classic buyer beware situation. Thompson should have addressed his concerns and tried to resolve the situation before getting attached to the puppy.
You're absolutely right. This case is a good lesson in doing your homework before making a purchase, especially when it involves a living animal. If you want a specific breed, get it in writing, make sure the breeder's legit and can give you the right paperwork, and don't hesitate to get a DNA test if you have any doubts.
Wow. These cases have been so fascinating. From contracts and family drama to even those puppy disputes, it's clear that so many of these situations could have been avoided if people just communicated better, had those agreements in writing, and took responsibility for their actions.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Judge Judy's courtroom gives us a glimpse into those everyday legal challenges and reminds us how important it is to be informed, prepared, and proactive. Whether you're signing a contract, lending money to a friend, or buying a pet, taking the time to clarify expectations, put everything in writing, and do your research can save you from a whole lot of stress and maybe even a trip to small claims court.
It's a good reminder that we can all learn a thing or two from Judge Judy. Maybe watching her show can even inspire us to take a closer look at our own agreements and make sure everything's crystal clear.
So next time you're in a situation where a handshake just isn't going to cut it, remember Judge Judy's words of wisdom. Get it in writing. And until next time, keep learning, keep asking questions, and as always, stay informed.